captured on camera, and you can laugh about that afterwards as well. So welcome everyone. I'm Robin Horsmans. I work, just like Paul mentioned, for the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, which is part of the Dutch Ministry of Climate Policy and sorry, the slides are not in presenter mode. Can I change that?
Maybe with
perfect. It does work. Okay, just the Ministry of Climate Policy and Economics. As I'm also the alternate delegate for the Geothermal TCP, I'd like to tell you something about the UTES in Europe. I used UTES, as you see, it's underground thermal energy storage, but it's comparable to geothermal energy storage, like most of you probably know it here in Northern America. And this is not the first of a kind. We have done this this is actually the 5th time that we actually organize a workshop like this. And it brought together policymakers, researchers, and industry, and we assessed Europe's readiness for UTES deployment. As you can see, we started off in Horen in the Netherlands, and we moved to Offenburg in Germany, then had a workshop in Vienna and also one in Zurich. All were on UTES and had different topics, but the main thing is that we also wanted to show many showcases that are already happening in Europe. And why do we actually do this? As most of you know, we are currently in an energy transition, not only in Europe, but throughout the whole world. And as you can see on the picture to the left, is that most of the energy demand is needed for heat. This is industrial heat, but also heating for houses. This energy demand is not constant throughout the year. You can see in the graph to the right that over the year, the demand drops. For example, in summer, there's more demand for heat in winter. And as you can see, for electricity, for example, there's also not constant input or demand of energy. It shifts during the day, so the time span of the demand also varies throughout the year or even throughout the day. And we need to go and find new sources for this, because we are mostly dependent currently still on fossil fuels, and we want to move to a more renewable way of supplying our energy demand. And one of those ways is by using geothermal, so renewable heat sources, because this is one of the most common sources of heat at the planet. And you might also want to think about power to heat, because the electrification is going faster than our heating transition. If you look, for example, to the transition of renewable energy sources in heating and cooling, you can see that for Europe, only 26.7% is currently renewable. There is a shift between, for example, Sweden and Ireland with a higher share, and the Netherlands, unfortunately, and Ireland with are more running in the back. Sorry, it's not going. Okay, wait, let me. Yeah, okay, sorry. And with this electrification, we in the Netherlands run as first of Europe through a big problem, which is grid congestion. You can see to the left that it's a big problem throughout the entire Netherlands. Because we have electrified, we have installed a lot of panels and a lot of wind turbines recently, this means that the grid cannot take this amount of energy at the moment. So if you, for example, are an industry or even a household, it's hard to connect to the grid or get a bigger connection to the grid. It even takes sometimes 5 to 10 or even 15 years before you actually get a grid connection. And that's also a reason why we need different storage technologies, because storage can actually shift the seasonal demand that I just showed you towards and be a more regular supplier, or take down the peak, take out the peaks in the system, so it will be a better way of using our energy. And why do we actually need UTES? Underground thermal energy storage, because if you think about storing the volumes that we can actually store in the subsurface, it's almost equivalent to 10 to 200 times an Olympic swimming pool of volume that can be stored in the subsurface. So if you think about it, placing it on the surface, that you need a lot of surface area to cover this amount of storage. There are several different underground thermal energy storage. We are almost covering the whole alphabet with our abbreviations. But we have ATES, which is aquifer thermal energy storage, BTES, which is stored energy in heat in boreholes, caverns, pits, mines, and fractures have been added recently. We have done several sessions in the last couple of workshops that all cover these different technologies. And if you try to compare them, the bigger the better. So the more volume you have, the more cost effective it is. So there's, this curve was created in HeatStore, in the HeatStore project. And you can see that if you go more to the right, the projects will get bigger, but the cost will also go down. For example, the high temperature ATES system in Middenmeer in the Netherlands, which was also part of the HeatStore project, is one of the cheapest ways to store energy or heat. The thing is that you need, the thing that you need with an UTES system or geothermal test is that you also need a collective system. If it's not in place, you need to install this as well, which can be a challenge for some countries. But the opposite side is that, for example, if you look at the potential map for example, ATES throughout Europe, you can see that in the green areas, that ATES is possible. This covers quite a big area throughout Europe. And if ATES is not possible, you have different other technologies of UTES, for example, BTES or MTES, that can be used in these areas where ATES is, for example, not possible. Conclusion, UTES can be done anywhere throughout Europe. And it's not, so it's very location specific if what kind of UTES technology you can use in that area. So like I said, some showcases that were done throughout Europe. These were some examples that are covered in our previous workshops. So for example, the Geospeicher in Berlin, which is an ATES system, the Treasure project, which is a PTES system from Denmark and Germany. But there are so many more examples that are not listed here, but are out there in Europe. And you can make use of these examples that are out there, that if you want to have an own UTES system in your region. By the way, also the Push It program will be presented this afternoon. And Bochum, the MTES in Bochum will also be one of the projects that is being presented in the afternoon. Like we said, we have done this 4 previous times. All the data can be found, and all the presentations can be found on the Geothermica website. So if you need some information, please go to the website and you can find everything about the previous sessions. And one thing that we learned from these sessions is that the technology may be well established, and it got from it was demonstrated several times, but there are different market readiness levels throughout the projects. So for example, MTES and PTES are in mid-market readiness levels. And there are different ways of financing these different projects. So for example, if there's some innovation steps to be taken, for example, for FTES, then it might be better to use grants or R&D for learning. And if you have a higher market readiness levels, for example, for ATES and BTES, it might be better to incorporate risk guarantees for mature projects. One other thing that we learned is that it's good to have energy storage strategies. Some examples exist out in Europe, and it's good that we actually learn from each other, because we can use what, for example, you don't have to invent the wheel all over again. So for example, in Austria, there was a national energy and climate plan introduced in 2024. For example, in the Netherlands, it's called the Nationaal Plan Energiesysteem. But it also includes a roadmap on energy storage, and that was what Paul was referring to. It is a roadmap where not only thermal storage is needed, but we look at the entire system and choose a storage type which is logical for that use. So for example, if you want to store for a couple of seconds or minutes and do not have a high, do not need to store a big capacity, then it might be easier to use electricity storage instead of heat. And the other way around, if you, for example, need a more strategic type of storage, then hydrogen or molecules might be some better to use. And for example, this was done in 2023, but for example, Switzerland has taken this into account by their new energy strategy and is trying to make or finalize this in this year. So if you see, if one country has an example, it can be used in many others. Then what these workshops have also taught us is that integration is needed. So if you plan a UTES system, then actually do already think about it when you start planning the whole network. So the heating grid, for example, includes a UTES, includes the sources, so you need to think about the entire system. Secondly, demonstrations. We just need projects to demonstrate that it works, and the people will actually know what it's like, see that it works, and to create reusable evidence. Financing, like I said, it might be better to use grants for the lower TRL levels and, for example, risk guarantees if you want to go to more implementation side with a higher market readiness level. Regulation is also something that came up. It needs to be simplified. It needs to be easier to implement. It doesn't need to be that long. Well, at least what we heard, that permitting takes quite a long time before you actually have the permit. So it might be good to actually align these or find an easier way to get the permit for if you have more storage projects. And lastly, exchange data, policy templates and strategies, and open and failures also to learn from them. Now, where do we stand in Europe? We said actually in Europe that storage is crucial in our future energy system. We cannot live or we cannot do the energy transition without it. And that's why we actually push for massive implementation on underground thermal energy storage. And it's very needed to share all the best practices. So that's also why we came up with these workshops. And we want to go globally now, because I think that not only Europe is in need for these storage techniques, but I think throughout the world we actually need to incorporate them. Lastly, there are more sessions regarding UTES organized by Geothermal or involved with them. The next one will be on the 8th of June, which is on advancing resource assessments of underground thermal energy storage. Some of the presenters, including me, will be part of the panel. So if you are around, please join. And that's it. Let's keep sharing best practices.